information is said to be cartoons. Nonsense. No, it's legitimate.
Laura.
About the shipwreck
Thank you.
Laura, am I micless?
No, I do have one mic, but I don't know. Let's see if it's working.
You may not.
Can you see?
Run across
Come over?
Interesting.
They're arguing that the Aborigines
I'm gonna go and get started with a newbie.
then before that, but they're just beginning to acknowledge
And,
that possibility. They're not-
Pardon the technical difficulty, but we got a little computer issue here that we're working through. We'll get through it somehow.
Sure you will. Hey, thanks for listening.
Well, thank you all for coming on this lovely evening that I'm sure the bees didn't enjoy today. They probably stayed home and ate a lot of honey. I'm Johnny Walker. I'm the president of the Beekeepers Association here in Pinellas. Like I said, thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm sure you could have found something better to do on this drizzly, weary night. But thanks for coming out. What we usually start out with is a little a newbie session. And we just talk about the bees and what the bees are doing and what the bees aren't doing. And today, the bees are not doing. Bees don't normally fly in the rain if you are a real newbie. And they stay home and eat all your honey. Well, not all of it, but they don't bring any in, so they ain't helping you. I do give them a little bit of break at my yard because they do bring it in, and it is kind of theirs till they give it to me. So I give them a little slack there. We do have some raffle stuff down here on the table that we'll be raffling off, so you can get your tickets at the front desk if you haven't sometime through the evening during the break between. And the break between will be really, really short because I always talk through that. So if you need to, just excuse yourself and slip out there and get some raffle tickets. Derek is up front here. Do you have your clipboards with you?
I have my clipboard with me, Johnny.
So he's kind of leading our mentor program, and he's got a list. So if you need mentoring, look, if you're a new beekeeper, you need mentoring.
Yes.
If you're an older beekeeper with some experience, you could be a mentor. Because if you know anything, you know something more than some people. So if you've been helped out, help someone out. It's just a hand-in-hand program.
Let me pass this around and put your names down here, take a card, and if I don't call you, call me. The other thing I wanted to say was, I've got 2 swarms arrived in trap nests in my house the other day, and they're looking for a home. So if anybody you newbies want to get started, come and I'll help you put them in a hive and you can have them. Okay, do you want them? Okay, so good luck everybody, and call me, if you need anything, just give me a shout. Thanks, Johnny.
Hey, Derek, can I call those bees?
Yeah, call.
So we also need, because we are a hands-on kind of bunch, we also need a little help with our Green Thumb weekend, which is 23rd and 4th. So we need a couple volunteers to help out with that. Who's heading that up? Who do they need to see?
It's online.
Oh, it's online?
Yes.
Okay, so go online and check it out and volunteer. How many more?
Two free tickets, raffle tickets for every shift you volunteer.
2 free raffle tickets for every shift you volunteer. Who says you get nothing free in life? So like I said, today probably wasn't the day to be in your bees. I have made a mistake of trying to go into my bees, trying to beat a rainstorm or something. It gets really ugly fast. So rainy, cloudy, nasty days are not the day to go in your bees.
Yeah.
And if you haven't ever done it, you haven't learned it, but once you learn it, you will know it really well. They are starting to put up a little bit of stuff. There is a few things starting to bloom, nothing great, nothing, you're not having to stack a bunch of supers on there. But it is the time of the year that you need to have your supers ready. Not that we're gonna get a avalanche of honey coming in anytime soon, possibly. But you need to have it ready, and you need to keep an eye on your bees. Make sure you've got gentle bees, and make sure your bees have adequate room to grow. If your box gets swollen and a bunch of bees in there and it's filled out 9-10 frames, you're gonna start getting a queen with the bug to move on, and she's gonna start, they're gonna start putting queen cells up and hatching out and trying to swarm on you. And you instantly lose about half or a little more than half your bees. So avoid that by making splits. Yes, sir?
How can I keep my queen from swarming?
Kill her and put a younger queen in there. All right, so what I try and do is I try and make sure that she knows that she is not out of space in her brood box. And that means they always need at least a frame of room to grow. And if you have a box that's built up to 9.5, 10 frames working on, the only way you can do that is take one of those full frames out and put an empty frame back in there.
Put a super on.
So you can put a super on, but if you let your brood box get packed out 10 frames, square, top, bottom, side to side, even with a honey super, she can decide that you're going to swarm. So you need to make sure there is honey room for them to put honey, and you need to make sure there's room for them to build and keep building brood. And if you have a couple hives, it's easy to pull a few frames out of each of them, stick some empty frames back in there, and let them produce a queen in that little nook you've just set off to the side. You do need to make sure there's some food in there, or feed it sugar water, or whatever concoction you use to feed your bees, because usually they don't have enough honey on them on a new nook. And that gives you room in your box for your queen to keep laying and keep going. So,
Johnny, you might like to add that quite often queens don't come back from mating, and
so with that nook box, what you're hoping happens, because you put some stick eggs in there, you're hoping that they build some queen cells, and the queen cells mature nicely, and a queen matures out of that bunch and survives and goes on her maiden flight and breeds. And after ever how many times she breeds, upwards of 20, 25 times I've heard, she comes back and starts laying. The trick is she comes back. When you go to your bee yard, you're looking around and there's all those cool dragonflies flying around and all. They're there trying to eat your queen and every other slow bee that drags through there. So it can be quite a minefield for her to get back to the hive. And you possibly could even not get a queen back to the hive. So you have options of buying a queen. You have options of pulling brood out of your other boxes and sticking back in there. There's several options you have. But it takes a beekeeper, not a bee haver. You got to go in and check on them. You got to see what's going on in there. See if you're queen right. See if you're minus a queen. I will tell you that, so this time of year it's getting better, but earlier in the year, you can go in your hive and look for stick eggs and not find them if there's been some really bad weather for 3 or 4 or 5 days. Queens have been known to shut down and not lay. So if you're coming off of a 4 or 5 day really cold spell or really nasty weather, and it's a nice morning and you get out there and get in your hive and you look and you're like, I can't find any stick eggs. I don't find any little C's. So I must not have a queen in here. No, you may have a queen in there. She just may have went, this is really too bad a weather to try and work on, and she'll hold off. So at that point you need to look for your queen. and figure out if you really do. Or wait a couple days once it's nice weather and go back in and check again. Usually you'll go back in and check and find you do have stick eggs and all in there. And if you're really new, and I'm talking all these terms, you're going, what is stick eggs? What is little C's? What is... So it's a special club we belong to, and there's little terms you gotta learn, or you'll be an outsider. So you need to learn the handshake, and the terms so you can follow along. Saturday morning, if you haven't got anything better to do, we're gonna have a little bee yard day over here at the back of the campus, and we're gonna open up some hives and go through them and show you what we're talking about. Hands-on is the best, was always the best for me, and I think that's the best way I teach it. And it was really easy for me to learn that way, so that's the way I like trying to do it. You can read a lot about books, there's a lot of books out there, and there's a lot of pretty good books out there. But what you need to realize is we're beekeeping in Florida, and most people in Florida don't write books about beekeeping. They write them up north. And we don't do it the way they do it north.
13 months of beekeeping down here.
Or at least
13 months.
the bees don't do it like they do up north. Because of the way our cycle is and the way our summer is and all, we raise our bees a little different, most beekeepers in Florida. And Florida is 3 regions unto itself as far as a southern, a central, and a northern. So the state of Florida has a large variety of things going on, let alone start going states on up where it's really cold weather. I'm going through my boxes in the spring and in basically the winter, and a lot of the northern states still have snow on the ground around their hives. So we really haven't made, we don't have bees that are really boxed in and stuck in the hives for months on end. Our bees are usually never really held up cold weather for 3, 4, 5 days is about all. So, is there any questions? Okay.
What time are you doing the opening of the bees this weekend?
Jim? What time are we starting the class?
9:30 would be best, might be warm by then.
Okay. So 9:30 Saturday morning?
Yeah, the announcement went out at 8:30, but I would prefer 9:30 for the bees.
Yeah. So in the spring and the winter, we try and back it up just a little. In the summer, we try and move it earlier so we're not dying in the heat of the day out there, because it does get warm, especially when you're wearing a jacket in July. So on that, if you're coming to the bee yard, I say dress appropriately, because I've been doing this for quite a few years, and things I've seen people wear to the bee yards is almost hilarious. Long sleeves not necessary, but it's not a bad idea. Don't wear black. Bees have this thing about bears attacking their hives and shredding them. And most bears, I mean, we don't have bees in Alaska that the polar bears bother, so most bears are either dark brown or black. And they might mistake you for a bear. So that would be a bad thing. So lighter colors, long pants. Derek never catches this one. I don't think he owns a pair of long pants. And closed-toed shoes. It's not as much for the bees, but for the ants. We do have ants around the bee yard, so closed-toed shoes. We have veils and gloves, and it is a fan participation, so you might get handed something in the midst of all this. So coming out, you probably will learn something. You either learn you're tired to listen to me talk, or you might learn something about bees. Yes, sir.
Do we need to sign up for that?
No, you don't have to sign up for that. Last year we were doing a sign up because of the COVID. We could only have so many people out. We've been running in the mid to upper teens. Our bee yard's big enough that we're just not having a problem. Too many people in one, so we're able to work through that.
We could use some more, like, even a little bit of experienced people to help out though, instead of 18 brand newbies that Jim was managing.
So like I said, if you have learned from experience from a mentor and got a year or 2 under your belt, and you really like bees, you can jump in and help us and be a mentor. Don't think you need to be a wallflower. So come on out, get on one side of the box or the other, and help us out, cheer us on, whatever. We can always use a little extra help. Can you think of anything else?
Free tickets for volunteers, and Jim needs help on Saturday. That's the two biggest things.
Those are
Don't
the-
wear any aftershave lotion or hairspray.
Or cologne or anything. So some things might upset the bees and some things may upset them more. And that can be perfumes or lotions or aftershaves or deodorants
Or bug spray.
or, or bug spray.
I don't like bug spray.
So, like I said, this time of the year, we are watching to keep an eye on the honey supers. I talked about the brood box. Move on up to the honey super. You don't want it getting packed out. So before your honey super gets 8.5 frames in it, working on 9 frames, you definitely want to put another box on there and get them moving and give them room to build on that. Because as it starts, a flow can pick up pretty quick, especially with these days we're having into the 80s. I know it was like 64 tonight coming in, but that's really not that cold for the bees. If we can get some nice bloom, so we're getting some rain, hopefully it's gonna get in the ground and get these plants, and in the next week or two, plants that are blooming should be giving up some nectar. It's pretty well that simple. If the rain comes down, it goes into the plants give up nectar. And if the plants give up nectar, the bees will work it. They'll work the pollen, they'll work the nectar, and bring you in some liquid gold and put it in your hive, and then they will fan it down and get it down to about 18% humidity, and they'll cap it, and technically it'll be honey then. And then you've got your own little liquid gold. And you'll pull a honey super off, which one honey super will harvest you about 2.5 gallons of honey. And you're thinking, what would I do with 2.5 gallons of honey? And that's what I thought when I got my first hive. And I had 3 hives, so the first time I extracted honey, I had quite a few 2.5 gallons of honey, to the point where I had like 20 gallons of honey. And I thought, oh no, 20 gallons of honey is really a lot of honey for someone who's, had a bottle on the shelf for a little while. And then before the end of the year, you're out of honey. You don't have 20 gallons of honey anymore. You've put it in bottles, and people you didn't even know are coming knocking on your door. You give it to your neighbors, and your neighbors give it to their kids or their whoever, and then there's people showing up at your house all hours of the night wanting to, well, so-and-so, I'm a friend of so-and-so's. They want honey. You do not have to sell it. It sells itself. So, any other questions? Yes?
Last September, October, my hive requeened. Should I go ahead and buy a new queen from a certified breeder now and replace her?
All right. The problem with your hive requeening itself is where the drones came from that it bred with. We do have Africanized bees in Pinellas. And you may have a queen that bred with the right drones, and you'll have a really good tempered hive. And you could have a hive that the queen got a little off to the side and found a few little bad boys to breed with. And all of a sudden you've got a queen that's raising some thugs. Nobody wants a bunch of thugs in your neighborhood.
You know by now.
And it could be an ugly situation for you in the neighborhood. You really don't have a good calm set of bees that you can work with. The state wants to see you requeen every year.
No, we don't.
You don't?
No. You don't have to requeen every year. We just, yeah, it's a recommendation. If your queen's laying, if you got a nice big brood pattern, and your queen is nice and docile, and you can work with these, don't requeen her. Let her, continue. They say that, a lot of times the commercial guys are the ones that, when your brood pattern's nice, and keep your queen.
If she's gentle.
And she's gentle.
Ruins it.
important thing. I mean, so when you got them in your backyard, you're not worried about how many gallons of honey they can produce. Because they'll be producing honey from you through the neighborhoods. There's so much in a normal neighborhood. And then there's sprinkler systems and all in one neighborhood. So things get taken care of good in neighborhoods. And we're out in a rural area, it's really different. So you're gonna get some honey. It's gonna move along. But if you don't have bees that are really you can trust and you can work safely, and if you're not sure about that, either your mentor can help you with it, and or come out to our bee yard. We probably have some bees in the yard that I can show you. These are what you need, and these are what you don't need. Most of our bees in our bee yard are pretty good. We did requeen last year, and they've been pretty decent. We did have one the end of last year that was spicy, Becky? Was that what we call it?
Spice Girls.
This hive would knock itself over, it was so mean. But Becky went a couple rounds with it, and she was surprised how unfriendly they could be.
They're always fun.
So is it just they were more aggressive, it's just their pattern of behavior?
So,
They
what's really
attack
what we
you.
look for, is the mean bees, the Africanized bees you'll have sometimes bees just buzz in your head a little bit, but when you walk away from your hive, they go back to their hive. With the Africanized bees, they're gonna follow you back to your truck and back across the road, and they'll start trying to dig into your sleeves to sting you. If you have any opening, they'll find it.
If you don't have openings, they'll find it.
They'll make one.
You'll get a whole, they don't look at you, they just act, their sound is different, you can hear their volume, their buzz is much more heightened.
So bees have different levels of aggressiveness. I mean, so when you crack the hive and you're going to inspect them, some of them will come out and fly around. Oh, what's going on here at our home? Looking around and everything. Okay, this isn't too bad. Then you'll crack the next one open, and some of them come out and fly around, and a few more of them come out and, well, we're not really sure of this, and we're not happy with this, and they'll just do a really close buzz by and buzz around your head. The next one you crack open is a little more flurrying around and buzz bys, and then you get a few that just bump into you, like warning shots. They're not trying to sting you. They're just bumping into you, letting you know, hey, you crossed the line here, and this is where we're drawing. Then the next box you open, they just come out of the box and like darts. They're sticking in you. Those are the ones that are having an ultra bad day, and they don't want you involved in their bad day. But
Those are the ones you requeen.
yeah.
Only this.
About 2 years ago, I had a hive that, it wasn't totally mean, but they would follow me around to the other side of the house and stuff. But the other thing I noticed about it was, they had swarmed like 2 or 3 times, just real quick. And then I opened it up one time and there was like 15 queen cells in it.
Yeah,
And it was just like they were swarming every 2 weeks.
that's another indicator.
And requeened it and it went back to normal.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing how fast they can actually go back to normal if you get a good queen in there and get them settled. Yes, sir.
I have to tell you about my spicy girls. I had 3 hives, and this one hive, I was going in with the hives with no gloves, and everybody was real fine. Then this one hive just started getting nasty, and nastier, and nasty. It made beekeeping no fun at all. Well, Becky said, well, go ahead and kill the queen, and put in the queen. So I'm in there, and I find the queen, and I take her, and I smush her. The second I smushed her, 30,000 bees knew about it, and they came after me. I'm running down the road.
Becky knew. we got a screen porch in the back of our house over our pool. When we first got into it, about the 3rd year we were there, we're extracting honey out on the pool deck because it's screened in and they keep most of the bees out. Of course, a few bees always get in your honey supers. And we had a guy come over to want to learn how to extract honey. And he was out there working with us, and one of the bees got all sticky with honey, and my wife says, and he wasn't quick to do whatever she told him to do. It was a quick study when it comes to that. So, all right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. We got a really good turnout tonight, like I said, especially for this weather. Like I said, if you didn't get any raffle tickets and you want to get them, so we got a brand new 4x10 smoker, date amp with the wood and leather bellows, not a cheap smoker. And we got brushes and hive tools and a book that I believe the author is here that could sign for us. I believe she's still out there.
She is.
And somewhat bee beer. Is that what that is?
Dan.
Dan, is that bee beer?
Yeah, from Carl.
Oh, from Carl. Bless his little heart. He just keeps showing up in little ways. So we have a few things up here for our raffle. If you have any fun, or if you think you want to help out the bee situation, join our organization. It's not expensive for the whole year. We do have some fun. We do put on the classes. We do have some outings like the Green Thumb, and I believe do we have anything else coming up right after that? Or I know we just did one here over in the Botanicals not long ago. So we're trying to get back to normal. They shut us down during the COVID thing as the whole world got shut down. We're trying to get back to normal with that. But Jim, are you going to have Wednesday or Monday? Monday at 10?
Yeah.
Monday at 10 out at Great Bag.
And I also want to say, I had 3 or 4 people call me about, they want to talk to me here tonight about stands and so on and so forth. So, Jim, I don't know who you are, I talked to you on the phone, look me up.
Okay, so what he's talking about is, and I believe we're still the only bee group in the state of Florida. Don't know about other states, but in the state of Florida, I believe we're still the only one that offers our members a place that they can rent a hive stand to put their bees on out at an apiary. It was a big to-do for us when we did it. I don't even know how many years ago now. We've been doing this about 100 years. At least 5. But so we have an apiary out there. You do have to rent the stand for the year. There are some pretty simple rules. You need to take care of your bees. You need to help take care of stuff out around the bee yard. You do need to sign in and out there. You do need to be a member, but you got to come up with what, $15 for our dues for the year. If you can't come up with $15 for the dues for the year, you probably shouldn't own bees because they're darn expensive. Is it $75 a year for a stand that'll hold up to 5 hives?
Yes, sir.
Jim, still? I'm not out there helping with his yard, so I get a little out of, just because I'm the president, I know a lot of stuff, but none of it sticks.
The stand is 10 feet long, so you put whatever is on.
So you can put a bunch of things, you put whatever fits on it, don't double stack.
You can't double stack, but other than that, you put whatever.
But you do need to take care of your bees, keep them healthy. There are other people out there with bees, so, you know, be courteous, and they'll be courteous to you. So, that's a neat bonus. The other bonus we have is, if you remember, we have a really, really nice stainless, motor-driven, 6-frame honey extractor.
It's at my house.
And you can, I would say rent it. I think it's $50 deposit because it's probably like a $1,500 machine now. They've gone up, they're not $1,200 anymore. It may be closer to $2,000. I haven't looked to see what one costs. They're expensive machines, and you can just borrow it, bring it back clean. It's a loan of $50, and you get your $50 back. In other words, don't destroy our machine. So it's basically free.
How much does it weigh?
How much does it weigh?
40 pounds?
It's not that heavy.
40,
It's
40
more
or pounds,
bulky
maybe
than it is
50.
heavy. But it holds 6 frames and it spins them out. It's electrical 120. It does a really nice job. I've used it before, so. Anything else I can think of?
Just one other thing to follow up with the requeening question. We still have some queens. If you wanna order the queens from Josh, there's still a few available. Probably.
Yeah, so you can go online and do that,
Yeah,
right?
or there's a scan,
Or you can scan this QR code, is that what it is? I'm learning left and right. I amaze myself on this. All right, so we're getting kicked off. This is the beginning of our meeting, not the newbie meeting. Still I'm the president. Johnny Walker, for any of you newer comers. I love this because it's almost full in here. I love seeing all these seats filled up. Once again, thank y'all for coming out tonight.
Sorry, there are people in here way smarter than me, but if you think you have a hot hive and you're just intimidated about getting in it, if you get a hold of me, I'll, now, I mean, call the state inspector, that is the right thing to do, but I'm saying.
Because Becky loves doing this.
I came from Arizona and have a full suit, and a couple of people tell me, you know, I'm just used to that. If you want a hand, feel free to call me. I just want to throw that out there. I won't tell you what you should do. That's up to you and your mentor, and you know what you think is your bees or your liability. But I will help you when there's 50,000 bees in your face. I'll be the one going, it's cool, just take a breath, play slow, don't run, it's all right. Okay, just throw that out there.
The hard part is finding the queen.
You do need a good balance when you literally almost can't see out of your face screen because there's bees all over it. It can be, for the first time it happens to you, it can be a little intimidating. The second time, it can still be a little intimidating. And around the fifth time, if you ain't got used to it, it's still intimidating. But at that point, you're just going, wow, I'm really glad I got this screen on, because if this was my face, I'd be sucking in bees. So, yeah, you need to take care of them, because you definitely don't want a hot hive. The problem with a hot hive is it's like flipping a rock out into a calm lake, and it hits and the ripple starts out, and you aggravate your hive in your yard, and you've thrown the rock in the lake, and the ripples out, and it goes out around. So it's not just coming towards you, they're doing a full circle, and then you're doing a full circle in the neighbor's backyard. And all of a sudden they're having a bad day, and they weren't even dressed for it. Flip-flops and a pair of shorts. And all of a sudden they're having a real bad day. So you don't want to do that to your neighbors or your neighbors' grandkids or anything, or pets. So try and be a responsible beekeeper and keep decent quality bees. Yes, sir.
Wouldn't this, if you had a sweet queen, wouldn't those kinds of things have a lesser aggressiveness about them?
Yeah, a good queen is very, so the problem you're having is if they bred with an Africanized drones and all.
Oh, it's back it on already, I didn't see that.
Yeah, most of the time, if you have a good European breed, stock, and a queen, things will be great.
Yeah, because ours went to the neighbor's house, and we went over and got them on our hand and walked them away from their house and got them flying again.
We like those things.
When they're aggressive, they're noticeable. If I could get y'all to stand, can we say a pledge of allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
They're up to giving some raffle tickets away, a couple raffle tickets for each volunteer that'll help out.
What exactly are you needing for the volunteer?
So, a warm body, some stuff lifted. So if you're not gonna be there alone by yourself, you'll be helping out. There's a lot going on around the Green Thumb. If it's a pretty day, and generally around that time of the year, it's a really nice day. And the Green Thumb thing is like herds coming through there. And it's just to talk to them about our organization. We're not allowed to sign anything there, but we get to talk about our organization, you know, what we do, and what we stand for, and how we help the bees in our area. And we usually have a huge influx of members join from that throughout the year. A lot of people care a lot about the bees, but a lot of people don't know what to do about it. Not everybody wants to bring a hive home with them because they have a pointy end. So, but that's what we could do some help with out there. So you don't have, you could be a new person in on it and work with us and we can get you in and use you. So you don't have to have 30 years experience. You don't even have to be a member. I mean, you can come out and volunteer some time and not be. We'd like for you to be a member, but whatever you can do, if you can help us out.
By coming to this meeting tonight, you know more than most people that are gonna come up and ask questions about these.
So I will tell you right now, they're gonna tell you their grandpa had these. I gotta tell you, it's gonna get out of the bag sooner or later, and you're gonna hear it. Honest, you will. So you don't have to worry about that if you're at the Green
I mean,
Thumb.
that's my story.
Never heard that before. We are doing the bee day, Saturday at our bee yard. It went out for 8 or 8:30. We'd really like to do it around 9:30. Get a little extra time. Not that we want it to get hot, but we want it to be nice and the sun to be up. Because of time change. Jim is doing his bee yard Monday at 10 o'clock out at Great Bay. If you can make it out there, go out there. Somebody had their hand up in the back. Is there a question? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is a question. How would you suggest to store drawn, clean palms? I have a whole bunch of super and clean drawn palms in my shed, and they're like outside in the shed. I don't know if that's a good idea. So should I put them in bins to prevent moth? Like just like trying to figure out how to store them.
I'll tell you what to do.
Get with Derek after. So don't think we have any other messages. I'm going to go ahead and ask Josh if you want to come up. Josh Harris is our speaker tonight. So you did the bee cross about 4 or 5 years ago out at the...
No, that was Matthew Beck.
That was Beck?
Yeah.
For some reason I was thinking... There you go.
All right, thank you. Well, it's good to be here tonight. I'm going to be talking about making splits. It is probably my favorite part of beekeeping, so I'm excited to talk about this. And I looked up a report today done by Bee Informed Partnership. They do an annual survey, and from April 2020 to April 2021, U.S. beekeepers reported losing 45.5% of all their colonies. And you would think, oh no, the bees are in danger, we're going to lose all our bees, we're not going to have any bees to pollinate. And yet the number of bee colonies actually increased over that same period of time. And so that leads to the question, how are beekeepers losing so many colonies and yet they have more colonies than they started with? And the answer is making splits. And so in the day and age we live in, it is absolutely a necessity to learn how to split your colonies if you want to continue to keep bees and not end up having something happen where your bees die and you either have to keep buying bees or you just give up altogether. And I have definitely been at that place many times, especially starting out when I lost all my bees, mostly usually due to a disease or virus related to varroa mites. When I started beekeeping, I started as a treatment-free beekeeper, and I thought it sounded really good, and it was a lot easier and a lot cheaper than treatment, but it didn't work out for me. I ended up losing all my bees, and then that's when I realized I need to start paying mine to mites, and from that point, I haven't lost all my bees, but I have lost a lot of bees. So the key for me as a beekeeper, there's 3 things that I think if I do, I can be somewhat successful in beekeeping. And number 1 is to monitor mite levels and to do something to control those levels and keep them acceptable. Number 2 is to feed my bees when they're malnourished, when there's not nectar coming in, to keep them strong and healthy. And then number 3 is to split my colonies when they're strong and when they're flourishing. And I figure if I do those 3 things, I'm going to continue to have bees and have a beekeeping operation. And so for me, those are kind of the 3 keys to success from my experience in beekeeping. Controlling mites, making sure my bees are well fed and well nourished, and then splitting when they're strong. And so we can go to the next slide. There's a couple different reasons for making splits. One reason is swarm control. If your bees are healthy, they are going to want to split themselves. And a lot of beekeepers call it hitting the trees. And I had a few colonies last week, hit the trees at one of my yards, way up in an oak tree. And I keep a bucket tied on a big long pole for that reason. And I'll knock them into the bucket and I got them back. But I wasn't fast enough splitting them and they decided to split themselves. And then the second reason for splitting is to increase colony numbers. If you want to have more bee colonies without always having to buy bees from somebody else that is splitting bees, you can split your colonies when they're strong and healthy and gain more colonies that way. So those are a couple of the reasons for splitting bees. And then we get to the methods of splitting bees. Next slide. Ingredients for splits. And so I know, how many of you actually have bees? All right. How many have actually made a split before? So there's a lot who have, but a lot who haven't. I know when I started beekeeping, I really didn't know any of the terminology. My first bees came from a swarm I caught at my work, and I put them in a box that I'd made, and I called up a queen breeder to get a new queen because I learned I should requeen a swarm that I found in the wild. And he said, okay, the day before you get this queen, I need you to go in and kill the old queen. And I didn't know what a queen bee looked like, but I went in the day before and I looked and all the bees had flown out of the box. They were way up on my neighbor's tree. I couldn't get them. And so I called the queen breeder. I said, hey, I'm not going to need that queen anymore because they flew away. And he said, well, did you have foundation in your frames? And I'm thinking, I have no idea what a frame is or a foundation. I just put them in the box I made that. I looked at the internet and saw the outside of bees. I knew nothing about the terminology. So I want to try to bring it to a level where anyone who's had any experience with bees can understand. But if you've never been in bees before, you're probably not going to understand it, and you need to get out to one of the apiary days and get some hands-on. But the ingredients for making a split. With bee colonies, we are required in the state of Florida to keep bees on removable frames so that the bee colony can be inspected in the box. And with those frames, the bees organize their own honeycomb, and they have a brood nest, they have nectar, and they sometimes have honey. Usually they don't have honey. Bees don't make honey all the time. They haven't made any yet this year for me, but they keep pollen in there, and so there's all different ingredients in that colony that you need to make a successful split. And the first is you need brood frames. And brood is where the queen has gone into the combs and into the cells and she's laid eggs and they're raising young bees. And there's several different stages. You have eggs, you have young larvae, you have older larvae, you have capped larvae that's pupating, and then you have emerging brood, and that's the adult bees that are chewing their way out of the cells and they're coming out as adult bees. And so when you're making a split, it's good to understand that and to recognize what you're looking at in your colony because you want different ingredients to make that split. And so my favorite ingredient is capped brood when I make a split because that capped brood is going to shortly in a week or so, all that brood is going to hatch out and you're going to have a lot more bees to populate that new colony. Nice young nurse bees that are ready to take care of the new queen and take care of the colony. If you are not introducing either a queen cell or a mated queen, you're going to need eggs and young larvae in that split because you need something for them to raise their own queen with. And so that's important to recognize open brood. And then you need feed frames. Frames that have nectar, honey, and pollen so that that new colony can have some resources to get started with. And then they can feed themselves and they can also feed the larvae in that split. And then you need nurse bees. Nurse bees are very important for splits. They are the most important, in my opinion. And then also forager bees, those are the older bees, and they're not as important for making a split, especially if you're feeding that split to get started off. You don't need as many forager bees. And Let's move on to the next slide. Different methods for splitting. And with splits, and with really anything, a million ways to do everything, and every beekeeper thinks they know the right way and everyone else has it wrong. But the point is, there's a lot of options, there's a lot of, I don't know who really makes up the rules as far as what's right and what's wrong in beekeeping. And one of my favorite things with beekeeping is just experimenting with different things and finding what works for me. And so with methods for making splits, there's probably 100 different methods, and probably all of them would work in the right situation. In a double brood box, you have two 10-frame boxes full of bees and brood, and there's a queen somewhere in there. What you can do is you can take one of those boxes and just make sure both boxes have young larvae, eggs and young larvae, and you can just put one box next to the other on a bottom board with a top, split them, and walk away. Come back about a month later and see if whichever one didn't have the queen in it, raise a new queen, and that's one method, a really easy method for making splits. It's called a walkaway split, because you just split the colony and you walk away, and that's it. It's easy. There are some disadvantages to that. One disadvantage is whatever colony doesn't have the queen, they're going to have to raise a new queen cell, and they weren't necessarily prepared to raise a new queen cell. And so what they do is make what's called an emergency queen cell. And they take a cell that was meant for a worker bee, and they convert it into a queen cell. They start feeding that larva royal jelly, they raise a queen cell, and a lot of times queens from emergency cells aren't as well nourished as a swarm cell, or as queen breeders. Queen breeders will make the right situation where the bees are super packed in, that swarming urge is there, they have all the nutrition they need to raise really good queen cells. And so an emergency cell isn't the best way to make a queen cell, but it will work. And so that's kind of the disadvantage of a walkaway split. Another method of best for them to swarm. I actually found one swarm a few weeks ago at the Great Bay Yard, and I put it in a box with drawn comb, and I didn't feed it, and they actually starved and died. Where usually when swarms take off, they eat a bunch of honey, so they have enough to go and establish a new colony. And I think some of these bees are swarming without those resources. And but when we start getting some nectar and we start seeing swarming, what I'm always doing as I'm doing my inspections is I'm looking for swarm cells to start to be made. And during heavy swarming seasons, I will go into my colonies more often than usual. And a lot of times, if I'm running a double box, I'll just lift the top box, look, and if they are getting ready to swarm, usually they'll start making some swarm cells right at the bottom of those top frames. And so when I see that, if they're uncapped, the queen is most likely still in there. I will go in and I will find that queen. In a natural swarm, what happens is the bees, they're doing so well, they have all the nutrition they need, they're packed in there, and they say, hey, we are doing so good, let's go make a new colony. And the old queen will leave with usually about 70% of the bees, and they'll fly off into a tree and look for a new place to live. And you lose your old queen, you lose most of your bees, and you're left with a really weak colony that may or may not make it. And so what I like to do is take that natural instinct of what the bees want to do anyways, and I want to control that a little bit. So when I see they're getting ready to swarm, I usually always keep some nuke boxes in my truck with foundation, and I will go and I'll find the queen, I'll put her in the nuke box with usually just a few frames of bees and brood and feed, and then I'll take it to a different location. And so that split happened the way they wanted it to happen. The old queen left with some of the bees, and then they already have queen cells, and they're usually good quality queen cells as long as genetics in those bees. And one of the things I do when I see that happening, usually they'll make up to like 15, 20 queen cells, and you don't want multiple virgin queens hatching at once. Right. Because when that happens, they will send off what's called after swarms, and those virgin queens will take smaller amounts of bees and they'll swarm, and I've had colonies completely swarm out till there's nothing left with after swarms, if too many queens hatch at once. So usually after I make that split with the old, and for me, it's what works. I have tried taking some bees away and leaving the queen in there. And usually what I find when they set their mind to swarming, they're going to swarm. And it's hard to stop it. And even a lot of times you give them more room, they still swarm. When they decide to swarm, it's hard to get them off that instinct. And so for me, the best method is just to take the old queen away, make a split with her, let them raise a swarm cell, and then you have 2 colonies that you get to keep rather than 1 colony and 1 in somebody else's tree. And then my favorite reason for splitting and method of splitting is making nucleus colonies, 5-frame nucleus colonies. I think nucleus colonies are awesome. I love having nucleus colonies, and they're so useful as a beekeeper. If you have some nucleus colonies, you can sell them if you have too many, and you can make some money with your bees, or you can keep them and put them in a full-size box when they get strong. You can take them and combine them with a weak colony, maybe a failing colony, and give that colony options with nucleus colonies. And so I love having nucleus colonies around. And when I split, I usually make nucleus colonies with my splits. And kind of our main thing is we produce local honey in the Tampa Bay area. And so honey is probably our top priority with our bees. And then nucleus colonies are under there. But it works out really good with our operation because we run single brood nests. 10 frames out. I'll take 2 frames of brood, and I'll take 1 frame of nectar and pollen, and I'll put it in a nuke box, and I'll make a split off it. And then I give them 3 frames of foundation. So that's always giving that queen and those worker bees something to work on so that they're not feeling like, hey, we've accomplished our mission, see you later, we're hitting the tree. And so I like making nucleus colonies all the time with my strong production colonies. And I can do it in such a way that I'm not taking so much strength away from that colony that I'm really hindering honey production. I'm just taking a little bit away so that they feel like, hey, we've got a little bit of work left to do in the brood nest. And I always like giving them some work to do in the brood nest so that they don't hit the tree. Making nucleus colonies is a method of splitting. That's my favorite method. And when I make those, I pretty much always make them with 3 frames. And then I have 2 empty frames on the outside of the nuke box. And usually by the time those 2 brood frames hatch out, that nuke box is filled up and it's ready to either go into a full-size box or to get sold to a customer. And we talked a lot about dealing with a hot colony earlier, and I hate bee removals. I'm not shy about that, but I like things that are controlled. I like nice, gentle bees, and raising queens and raising nucleus colonies. I can control that a lot better than bringing stuff from who knows where into my operation. But I do once in a while deal with hot bees, and when I have a hot bee colony, I need to requeen it. Now the problem is, it's a hot bee colony. It is horrible to go in. Sometimes you get one and it's hard to go through 10 frames of a hot colony. And a lot of times to find a queen, you need to go through 10 frames like 5 or 6 times. And so it got to be such a pain trying to deal with some of these hot colonies. And a lot of times they'd be in multiple boxes, and I was putting queen excluders between every box and trying to see which box had eggs and trying to narrow it down. And then it hit me, why don't I just split this colony into a bunch of colonies and deal with it that way? Because I'm always trying to make nucleus colonies anyways. And so when I have a hot colony, is I will just get several nuke boxes, like 3 to 5 nuke boxes, depending on the size of the colony, and I'll split that hot colony into about 2 to 3 frame nukes, usually 2 frame nukes. Split it all the way down. And then I'll just leave it, and I'll go away for about 7 to 8 days. And is that the bigger they get, the meaner they get. And so by splitting it, hatches, or about day 3 or 4, it hatches into a larva, and about day 4 is when they start turning it into a queen cell. And so by waiting 7 to 8 days, by the time you go in and knock down all those other queen cells, they don't have any larvae young enough anymore to make a queen, and they're desperate. They're hopelessly queenless. They're desperate for a new queen. Another thing about hot colonies They are the hardest colony. And so by doing that, all the other colonies, except for the one that have the queen in it, they don't have any eggs or young larvae old enough to make a new queen cell. They're hopelessly queenless, and they're much more likely to accept a queen. And also, smaller splits will accept a queen much more readily than a big colony. The nucleus colonies are much easier to requeen than a full-size colony. And so that's what I've been doing for the past couple years, and it's working really good. Now, I don't just take those splits and go sell them to people. I keep those isolated at a different yard than all my other nucleus colonies, and I will make sure they get plenty of time with that new queen so that the old bees die out before I consider them converted.
Josh, I just want to add too, that's a perfect way to do it, but also destroy your drone cells in those when you're doing it.
That's a
You
good
don't want
point.
those drones out there mating with others.
Yep, and one way you can do that is just to take like a capping unscratcher or capping scratcher and just scratch up that drone comb and get rid of those, as I think Johnny called them, bad boys. So that's another method that I use. I split with when I have a hot colony, and it works really well. Let's move on to the next slide and talk about requeening splits. And so several different options. I talked about earlier, emergency cells is when you just let your split raise their own queen. The pros of that is you can get a queen any time of year. You don't have to find a breeder who has them, which is really hard. The cons is it's not always the best quality queen. You can help that out by giving them plenty of nectar and pollen or sugar feed so that they can have more resources to try to raise a quality queen cell. Another way is to get right queen cells, either by making queen cells yourself. I like to graft queen cells. It's something I started messing around with as a very new beekeeper, and just trying everything and experimenting with stuff. And it's not rocket science. There's a lot of resources. There's books. There's YouTube videos. It's something anybody can really mess around with if you have some good queen stock to start with. Or find a queen breeder that you can buy queen cells from. They're a lot cheaper than a mated queen. Mated queens are running from $30 to $40. Right now, queen cells are usually like $5 to $7, something like that. This queen cells would usually go in the colonies. I was turkey hunting with my son, and so I had to leave them in the incubator and hatch them and introduce virgin queens. And I've had really good luck with introducing virgin queens to a colony. So there's sometimes either you can make your own queen cells and hatch them, or sometimes you can buy virgin queens from a queen breeder. And I was told by Matthew Beck, who I got some virgin queens from one time, just to not put them in a cage, just to smoke them into the entrance. And I had a great success rate with those virgin queens. And then mated queens. Mated queens are my favorite. If I have extra mated queens, I love making nukes with mated queens because they don't skip a beat. You're putting brood in, you're giving them a mated queen. Within a day or two, that queen is already laying and they are off to the races to become a big, awesome colony. And so mated queens are my preferred method of requeening. There's certain things that we can do as beekeepers to increase acceptance. And one of those is young nurse bees will accept a new queen a lot more readily than the older forager bees that are also the guard bees and the ones that are more defensive in nature. And so, especially when I buy queens that are going to be my breeder queens, and I spend a lot of money and have them shipped in from out of state, I don't want to take a lot of chances. And so what I do in that circumstance is I make nucleus colonies with like 3 frames of bees and bees in there. You need a lot of nurse bees because all the older bees are going to fly out. They're going to go back to the old colony. And a mistake that I've made in the past, and I've seen made a lot, is to make a split, keep it in the same yard. You say, man, I put a bunch of bees in there. You come back the next day, there's not even enough bees to cover the brood, and your split fails. If you're doing the same yard, you need to shake a lot of bees. When you do that, you need to find your queen first. And anytime you're making a split, I recommend finding the queen. Unless you're doing a walkaway split, finding the queen and making sure you know which box she's in the one you want. I don't do that a lot because usually I'm making a bunch of splits and I just don't have the time to find all those queens. And so if I make 50 splits in a day, inevitably there'll be a few boxes, a few splits that I find I accidentally put the queen in. And so I try to do my best to look, but if you're shaking bees, find the queen, put her in a clip, and then you can shake a bunch of extra bees into that split, and that way you can ensure you have enough bees that are going to stick around, those young nurse bees, to get that colony started right. Well-fed bees. Well-fed bees accept queens more readily. Well-fed bees do everything better than malnourished bees. When bees are hungry, and I have a lot of bees I'm seeing right now that are hungry, that they are eating through all their honey stores. They are hungry right now. They're robbing. They're going to trash cans and looking for soda, looking for anything. Well-fed bees accept queens better, and so if you are introducing a new queen or a queen, better acceptance rate if you put feed on that colony as you're making a split. And really with any split, it's going to do way better if you put feed on it. And then leaving them undisturbed. It is amazing. As I have more bee colonies, I do much better at this. When I didn't have many colonies, I wanted to go in them all the time. And so I would make a split and I'd look, oh, I want to see if there's a virgin queen in there. Oh, I have extras for myself. But if you leave them undisturbed, even with a mated queen in the cage, people say go in and make sure they released her. You're probably better off not going in. Usually they release her, and you will have a better chance if you just give that queen about 2 weeks to get established, for them to get used to her, because oftentimes if you go in too early, they end up getting thrown off and they'll ball her up and kill her. And so, weak, or sick colonies. Don't split weak or sick colonies. In nature, it is strong, healthy bees that want to swarm. And so if you're making a split, you really want to have strong, healthy bees, that everything's going right, so that you can then make a new colony. If your bees are weak, if they're malnourished, if they're sick, they're dealing with enough. They don't need to try to make a new colony. They're trying to survive. They're probably not going to survive. And I have seen this happen before with beekeepers that just want more bees and want more bees. And I've had times where we're going to help somebody make splits, and I look at their colonies, and literally there's mites crawling all over them, deformed wing virus, and I'm thinking to myself, you're not even able to take care of the colonies you have right now. You don't need new colonies. And so make sure your colonies are strong and healthy before you decide to split them. If you are faithful with a little, you will be faithful. And that is very, very true of beekeeping. If you take care of the little bit of bees you have, they're going to grow. You're going to have more colonies. With beekeeping, you're either losing colonies or you're gaining colonies. It's very hard just to stay where you're at. It's almost impossible. And so that's one of the challenges with if you're just keeping bees in one yard and you can only have 3 colonies, 6 during swarm season. If your bees do really good, you're going to have to contact the club and either donate colonies or sell colonies. And so you're either going to Sulphur Springs and Orange Blossom. And so I'm glad the baby didn't come that day. And then when you have more colonies than you know what to do with, you're probably going to get into the bee business in some way. That's how it happened for me. And so that is my talk on making splits. Do we have any questions before I give it back to Todd, I think?
Since you're so split addicted, if you will, do you typically ever do double deeps even, or are you just more
Yeah, right now I have a bunch of double deeps, and so yeah, right now I have double deeps with feed on them, and I'm just trying to get as much brood as I can and as many bees so I can make splits.
I don't know if you have to register like each box, but if you're doing a split, do you then have to register that box?
No, you don't. As you get more colonies, as the inspector comes out, they see you jump from one number to another, they will record that and then charge you accordingly. And, I'd love to help you any way I can. Thanks.
So are you selling nooks? Or
Yes,
queens?
I am. Right now, Nucleus Colony is already pre-sold, and I'm working on May, but if you go to our website, queenandcolony.com, you can order Nucleus Colonies for May, I believe it's May 14th pickup. And if I have them ready early, I call people, let them know as well.
I do not believe you could do better than local bees. Trying to get them from another state or a package bees or anything? Yes, ma'am.
5 hives is $10, and 6 to 40. Yeah.
Becky so-so. My wife used to call her your bee wife. So we've been pretty close over the years. I've loved working with her.
He deserted you and became an inspector.
Yeah, no. Just dropped me like a bad habit. So yeah, I am not the world's biggest government enthusiast, and I'm gonna lay low with that, but I will tell you that the State of Bees apiary inspectors are some of the most bee-loving, helpful people you'll ever have in your life. So you probably won't come up any real good ones. I had most of them. But it's really an asset. And I mean, so they're there to help us as beekeepers. They are looking for disease and all in your hive, and they answer a ton of questions about everything else. And if there's ever a stinging incident or other issues, they're right there on your side and really jump in and help you out. So for $10 a year, you cannot go wrong. And I mean, so it is the law, but it's definitely a useful one. So definitely get your bees. So she inspects bees, she doesn't inspect you for bees. So don't call her if you don't have bees. You can get hold of her, you can register, but she can't come and inspect bees if you don't have bees. So you have to get your bees, whether it's a swarm, whether you bought a nook, or whether you bought a package. I did notice he did not speak about package bees. I wish you'd hit a little sharp note on that. I am not a huge, I just don't care much for packages. They're a little hard to install when you're in and you're not dead set on 100% of what you're doing, and you get a package of bees that come in the mail, and it's a box with screen on several sides, and you can see all the bees in it, and there's a little syrup and a queen in a cage, and you're just dumping them into an empty box with some frames, and hoping they stay there, and hoping the queen stays there, and then they fly all off, and there goes your $100-something in the wind, with like $40 shipping or something. Also, they're not as much fun when they're all dead. And I will tell you that most beekeepers will tell you a package of dead bees just will not. You can add syrup to them. They don't produce honey for nothing. It's a terrible problem. So the best thing you can do is, like Josh was talking about with the splits. So if you're going to purchase a nook, try and purchase them from someone local. Jim, are you got any nooks or anything going like that, or going?
Yes.
All right, so stand up so they can see you. I'm just going around the room and hitting who I know has them, and we'll sell them. So if you are a newer beekeeper, this is a really good time of the year to try and get hold of someone with some nooks. So Josh and Jim, Sebastian. He's from Pasco, but we still let him come down and visit us because he is a pretty decent guy. Yours will be ready when?
First week of April.
And you sell queens also too?
Queens also.
Cells or just queens or?
Cells and queens, but my minimum for cells is 10.
Okay. I will tell you that if you're looking online, Go ahead, I can see you standing back there.
There's Bert.
Bert.
Selling nuts also, I got some ready now, and then I also got a bunch of wax if anyone wants. They're about 7 pounds of wax.
How much is your 7 pounds of wax?
$7 a piece, $7 a pound, so.
Okay. Well, six, say $7 for 7 pounds, I'm gonna take one. I probably got 250 pounds of wax. $1 a pound, it's worth it.
I've got nukes also.
Oh, you got nukes? So you've got them or you will have them?
I don't have any today, I mean,
Wow.
they'll be a week or two.
Okay. All right, so we're really fortunate here with the size group we have. We got like 5-ish, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that will sell us nooks, and several of them will do queens. That is really top notch because there's not that good of production in some of the other counties. So we have an asset there. Definitely use them. Are we ready?
You wanna mention the state plate, just, you know,
The state plate.
figure out.
I saw the thing out there. So the B plate, we're still shy on getting that thing passed by. You remember how many?
October, oh, I don't know the number, so.
I can't remember how many numbers. So there's a state, a B tag for the state of Florida, because we've got tags in the state of Florida for everything else. So you get a B one, and you can pre-register that, right? And they have to get so many registers before they'll.
So, by October, it's 30 some odd dollars. You pay for it, and it goes towards, we need 3,000 for the state of Florida. The funds completely support bee research. The University of Florida has a great research institute for beekeeping. It benefits us. It goes to a lot of programs that benefit us, including the new cottage laws, etc. But this plate, if it doesn't go through, you get your money back, and it's a refund. But it's a really cute honeycomb plate. It says "Save the Bees." I think we all support that. But if we don't meet it by the end of the year, then those funds and all of the support that's gone to it just kind of goes zilch, and that's our last attempt.
Order.
Yes.
So please order your B tags. Help with the green thumb, the apiary on Saturday, the apiary on Monday with Jim at Great Bay. I tell you what, so the club, join the club, make us proud. We do really well, so it's not unnecessary. You don't have to join the club to come to the bee yard, and yet we have no charges for none of that. This is a pay it forward group. I learned to pay it forward at the beginning because I was taught to pay it forward.
Lights are flickering.
Thank you. I'm here every month. Fortunately, they keep bringing me back. I gotta tell you, so I got into beekeeping. I had an older gentleman come to my house and check out some bees that I tell people I was adopted. I got out of the wall. He came and he came from a family of beekeepers from Canada. He taught me a lot about bees. I got hooked up at that time with Tampa Bay Beekeepers Association. Did a lot of years with them. Had several people here tonight from there. I was hugely glad that they showed up. Went through there. I was actually the vice president and the president over there for several years. I really worked real hard in the apiary over there as I do now, and actually Jim's kind of taken over my spot in the apiary. That guy is out at our apiary all the time. He keeps things pretty straightforward at our apiary, and Maura and her husband so Maura's in the very back. Her and her husband keep our apiary like a golf course. And that's not an easy task. Come along about July when everybody's out of gas and it's too hot to be outside to do anything, and she's out there fighting bees and mowing the yard, her and her husband. They're a great couple, and they keep our bee yard looking really well.
Thank you, Mark.
We appreciate it. And probably why I appreciate it so much is because then I don't have to. But she keeps it really looking, her and her husband keep it really looking good. We had a lawnmower donated to us, I think about a year ago. And we're still using that one, correct? Okay. So we do have a honey house that I brought over, and we set up on the yard. We do honey extractions out there seems like lately it's only been in the fall, but maybe someday we'll get a summer crop, if we get some rain. Have we got the computer set up for the ticket raffles? We're working on it? Okay, so I'll just keep faking it. A little more applause and I can keep this group going. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
At what point do you add super on top of the walkaway split?
So all that is really a tight line act. So once you've got about 5 years of experience under your belt, it's no problem. The problem is that first hive to 5 years is a little. So when you got a box and you say you bought a Nook, and you bought one of Josh's Nooks and it's just busting. And busting, when I mean a hive is busting, whether it's a hive or a Nook, when it is busting is when you smoked it a little around the top and you crack the lid on it and you go, oh, if I had to stick one more bee in this box, I can't see where you would put it. It's just full. That's a busting box of bees, whether it's a hive or a Nook or whatever. So when you switch that over into your hive, you put 5 frames over into a 10-frame box. And now you have 5 frames that are really, there's bees to start going around on it, but there's nothing, there's no brood, there's no honey, there's no pollen or anything in there. So they start building it up. It can take weeks or months depending on the season or what's going on there. And as that box starts filling up, and you go 6 frames now are full, 8 frames are full, 8.5, 9. Once you get into about 9 frames, you want to put a honey super on. Not before, as Miss Becky says. And she learned really well. Flaws. No. So not before, you want to make sure they get the bottom built out good to get into the honey super. They start building super. Now when this honey super's on, and it's got 3 good frames of honey in it, and then it's got 5 and 7 and 9. Now you need to get another box on there. You do not want to extract honey that is not capped. And even in Florida, capped honey, the bees will sometimes lie to you just a little bit. And here's the scenario they're in. They're working in this box in the dark, and they maintain this box at 95 degrees so they can raise brood. And they're bringing nectar in that's 85, 90% moisture. And they bring it in and put it in the cells, and they fan it. And they fan it. And they fan it. And they're trying to draw the moisture down to 18%. And we're running 85, 90% humidity here in Florida in the summertime. So along about July, when they're bringing in the thinnest nectar possible, which is probably cabbage palm or maybe mangrove, at 90-something%, they're having to bring the moisture down on it to 18%. And they're fanning these cells going, that looks about 18. Because you can get some capped honey that I've seen 21-ish, 22% honey and so the problem you have with this is if you have honey that is 18% or less capped in honeycomb and you extract it, put it in a jar, and you put that jar in an Egyptian tomb, and thousands of years later someone digs up that tomb and opens that jar, they go, hey, this is honey. So it lasts a really long time. If it's over 18% and you put it in a jar, you're either making some nasty tasting vinegar or you've got the start of some mead, so you can make some honey wine. It could go either way. Usually it doesn't go the really good way, and you end up with a hot mess. But so we're getting there.
All right, we've got 394 tickets sold. The first ticket was $872. The The last ticket was $12.65. If anybody has a ticket outside that range, speak now or you're done. You ready, Johnny?
Yeah, so the offset to this is, I
That's
think
the one
they
I
have
want.
to be 21.
I hope you can see those numbers, because I can't for me.
Not one of mine.
10.
The last four digits is 1047.
I got it.
You got it. Are you old enough to drink beer?
Yeah, but I don't want it.
You don't want the beer?
No.
Well,
Anybody can ask.
Just draw another.
Draw another number.
Give him something else. John, give him something else.
Yeah, give me something else.
Give him something else.
993.
993.
You're kidding. You just missed the beer by, oh no, you got the beer.
Got it? Hold on, bud.
You said you wanted it.
I get the beer?
993.
Oh, all right. Well,
Glory be. If we can chase the author down, she can sign it for you. 1051. Could you sign it for her?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm gonna get your picture, we're gonna post
A
it.
bee brush. These things are more handy than you'll,
You're welcome, enjoy the book. Very exciting.
or a toothbrush.
There, I got it.
997.
if you want to put your name down here with the rest, okay?
997.
997. Is that you too,
That's
Derek?
me. Again. My lucky not.
A decapper.
Let me get a shot of it.
Oh, you can take a picture of me with this.
These are for poking holes in the back of your thumb, because that's what I do behind the
Yeah.
Okay, do you have 983 too?
93,
983.
993.
No? 983, all right.
Can you get a picture for the website?
We have saved the best for last. Date amp smoker, stainless. Will last you a lifetime unless you drive over it with your truck. They are not truck proof. Don't ask how I know. You will someday. This is like almost a $50. Don't forget about ordering queens. If you need a few queens, don't forget about getting that order in so you can get them. I will tell you that the larger apiary, queen rear apiaries, is selling a large number of queens to large queen rears, and you cannot get them for yourself if you need 1 or 2 or 3 queens. So that's where we've learned to work together, and some of these guys are raising their own queens for that very purpose. So you need to get them ordered or they'll be sold out. Josh. So the other thing I would like to do is I would like to take a moment and thank the people that work with me with this group. My vice president, my secretary, treasurer, I think, is still out at the desk with her nose to the grindstone, where she's been all evening. And I got apiary helpers, Jim and Jim. I picked them that way because it was easier for me to remember. Also, if somebody would like to see us get back into having some treats and some bottled water or something for our meetings, if I could get someone, if I could scrape that off on somebody to pick up that job, I mean, the association will pay for the snacks and the drinks, but if we could get somebody to...
What does that look like? What would you need transport?
we just need to figure out a number of some waters and some kind of snacks.
It is yours to run. How's that?
Get with me on that, we'll figure out some numbers and bounce around. Does anybody have any questions? Comments? Concerns?
What time are we starting Saturday? Because it's gonna be cooler.
9:30ish.
9:30.
Yeah.
Where do we meet Saturday?
So, on the back side of the campus here is Ridge Road, just south of 102nd. I'll have one of those yellow signs with Pinellas Beekeepers on it. And we'll pull right into a grass here. You'll see other cars there.
And there's a map on the website too.
Okay. So if you have or if you haven't checked our website out, we've got a really cool website with some really cool stuff on it.
Lots of QR codes and stuff.
Lots of QR.
Yeah. They keep trying to get stuff around me that I don't know what they're talking about. And I have to do homework and try to figure out what the heck are they talking about, so I don't look what I do. But, I mean, I got a cell phone. So, once again, thanks for coming out. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. And if you have any questions and any concerns about queens or nooks or any of that stuff, ask somebody. Beekeepers are just generally not bashful. But like Josh said, if you ask a dozen beekeepers, you'll get 15 different answers. So, you just kind of have to do the math and figure out what'll work for you. Thank you for coming.